Good afternoon, friends, or morning or evening, or whenever you're watching or listening to this. And welcome to the episode 9 Fantasy Suite recap, The Right Reasons.
Welcome. We are, again, not in our usual place.
The usual place has been one time. The best laid plans.
Right.
Really,
so we're
truly.
not at Stand Up New York, which is still the sponsor of the show, so thank you to them. We had something come up yesterday, and we
by
are doing
something
it.
come up, he means I had a rancid migraine.
Is rancid the term?
I don't know.
Is rancid like a smell? Or a state of
That's true.
decay?
It was, I felt like I was decaying. I don't know, for those of you who get migraines, I only get them like maybe 1 to 3 times a year. And it was so bad that we were rewatching parts of The Bachelor in the morning to take down notes for the show. And I could not stare at the screen without seeing like light auras. And it was hurting my head so badly. I ended up staying the entire day in a dark room with like a blindfold on, essentially. It was a very attractive sleep mask. So we're so happy to, I know I am. I'm so happy to be here and functioning. I may look a little tired. I may sound a little tired for you podcast listeners. But we didn't want to wait one more day. So thank you for your flexibility with us. It's what happens with live stuff, you know? It doesn't always go as planned.
That's very true.
Pull up the comments here.
Yeah, we were getting comments going on. This episode was, I don't know. I mean, not a lot happened. We're just building up for the crazy drama, for the Women Tell All, and the finale is what the ending of the show is called. I don't know. General consensus has been that this is a difficult season to really enjoy. There's been a lot of like start, stop. No, now there's another problem that makes it hard on Peter, and he has to apologize and all this stuff. And I'm just kind of exhausted. I just want to get this over with. I want Peter to go away. I want him to live his life. I want this back and forth drama to end. I want Victoria to not be on TV. Like, I want all these things. And we have to wait, 2.5 more weeks for the finale, and then obviously there's going to be something that happens afterwards. I think there's going to be like more follow-up.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
I would love to know from all of you, and thank you so much. There are so many of you in the chat right now. Emily, Chris, Anna, Cassie,
everyone's saying hi.
Hallie, thank you so much. Nikki, thank you. Just seriously, thank you. They suck. Migraines suck.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm one of those people that really is a follow through on time, like that type of a person. And so when I can't show up for my commitments, that's a whole different podcast episode. We could talk about negative self-talk. But I would love to hear from all of you. If you had to pick one word to describe this Fantasy Suite episode, what would that word be? I love doing this with the last one. It was really interesting to hear all of your different opinions and takes on it, because I guess if I had to pick one word, it would be stressful. I felt the stress palpitating off of the screen in our living room watching this. And so I can only imagine what it was like. And not the whole thing, but the stressful feeling for me kind of eclipsed the episode.
I'd say, one word. Stress isn't...
Catherine in the chat said this episode, I didn't even see this, the episode was the definition of stress.
Oh, nice.
Okay, we got confused.
I would say my one word, I want to go with tense, but I think I'm actually use a different I want to use tension, because I think about this like a branch trying to snap. Like, Peter just wants to have fun. That's why I like to stay with Hannah Ann, and we'll get into it in a little bit. I just see the guy has been going through so much on this season. He has had to apologize every episode for something that most likely he didn't have any hand in. He's had to deal with so much drama between the contestants themselves. Nothing to do with him. There's been a lot going on. He had the whole Hannah Brown thing early on. I want him to go on a vacation so badly after this.
Yeah.
And other bachelors you've seen, and bachelorettes, they usually have a couple episodes where they're like, this is great, I'm loving this. I haven't seen him do that one time. He's had individual things that he's liked, but the overall thing, like, dude just needs to go blow some steam off after this. That's what it feels like. So much tension inside of this.
Yeah, it has felt very tense. We got, so just to recap, because I know sometimes, so podcast listeners, you cannot see the live chat. And then if you're watching on YouTube, you can't sometimes see the live chat afterwards. So I just want to read off some of the words that are in here. We have produced.
Good words.
We have horrendous. We have stressful, ridiculous, awkward, disheartening. Chris says intentional from a production standpoint.
Nice.
Yep. Uncomfortable, chaos, uncomfortable, confused. 100%. Nicole says, I'm so annoyed with this season and how they have portrayed Peter as an absolute idiot when we know from last season he is not that.
Word.
Yeah, he is indecisive, yes, 100%. People pleaser, yes, absolutely. Idiot, no.
No.
And he is being portrayed a bit airheaded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm not loving. So let's get started.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Can I, one thing?
Yeah.
Please be sure, if you're here with us on YouTube, to hit the thumbs up on the video. And if you are listening to this on a podcast, make sure that you have subscribed and rated and reviewed the show on whatever platform you are listening to. That will be probably one of 3 or 4 times that I'll say that, but, here we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Let me see.
So we start
with the recap of the end of last episode.
Yeah, so it's Madison pulling Peter in the airplane hangar is where we start off.
So she starts talking to him, and this is important, the exact wording she uses, because we get a follow-up on this later on in the episode, and there's an incongruency with some of the words she uses.
Correct. That happens a lot.
Ooh, that might be my word for this episode, incongruent.
Contradictory would be another one.
That's a good one. Okay, so I'll let you get into the specifics. You took better notes around the actual details of this, but this is my overall response to this. She begins by telling him how difficult this has been and blah, blah, blah. Here's my issue. I am tired of not every conversation, I'm speaking generally, broad brush. So many conversations with Peter have started out by the contestant saying, this has been really hard for me. Okay, you're not the lead. Also, that begins every conversation like that with Peter. He's now on the defensive. Every single time he is having to receive, understand, empathize, reflect. All of those he's great at. And he's very talented at communicating. He's worked very hard on his communication skills. The problem is, he's the lead of the show. He needs to be expressing his interest and having back and forth conversation instead of starting every conversation. Oh no, what's wrong? Did I hurt you? Did I say something? What's happening? Why are you struggling when I hope they're not blind. He's been struggling a lot on this season. Anyway, so that's my initial response is, is something wrong with another contestant? Is he apologizing? Good.
I think that this episode in particular is a great example about how most of the things in life are not black and white. And
totally.
We're all searching for the questions that I've seen online. And this is an interesting consequence or outcome of us waiting a day to do our show is typically I am not exposed to other people's thoughts and comments on the episode until after we film. Yeah. And because of just the time in between, I've seen some other people's posts and things. And it's really interesting to see how we're all trying to categorize things in these boxes. Like, is Madison like Luke P? Check yes or no. Is this fair? Check yes or no. And in my opinion, most of the Madison Peter stuff is not black and white. There are things that she could have done differently. They're not really things that he could have done differently. But it's not that she's bad or good. She has done things that are not the best choices, but it doesn't make her a bad person. It's just really confusing. So what I did for this first conversation was we got a lot of feedback that people liked our little role play last time.
Oh, God.
So,
we're doing this again.
We're gonna reread. I took down the script of Madi and Peter's conversation. Please. So, do you want to be Peter?
Sure.
Okay.
I didn't know we're doing this.
Surprise!
Yay.
Live show.
All right. Oh. Because she put him on the defensive, the natural thing to ask as the lead of this show, are you okay?
Yeah, it's been a really hard week.
Talk to me. What's up?
You're
scaring me. What's up?
Well, I want to be honest about who I am and how I feel. And if next week you were to sleep with somebody else, it would be really hard for me to, really move forward in this. And I feel like I owe it to you to be upfront and honest with you about that. And that's really important to me.
So what you're saying is, like if I were to, did you actually write down the exact words?
Correct. This is verbatim.
God, this is bad English. So I think we don't notice sometimes how grammatically horrible we are when we're speaking because it's in the moment, and this is a great example of that. So, what are you... This is killing me, right? What are you saying, like, if I were to spend the night with someone else, that's not something you could do?
It'd be really hard for me if that's the case. But,
So that's a no.
I don't know how to answer that because I don't want to tell you,
I kind of need to know. I don't know what you're telling me right now. What are you asking?
I'm not asking.
I feel like that's not necessarily fair to the relationships I have in there being Hannah Ann and Victoria.
In no way do I want to give you an ultimatum or tell you what you can or can't do at all. And I hope you know that. I hope that you know my heart. But for me, actions speak louder than words, and I'm really big on that. So at this point...
I fucking hated that sentence.
At this point, Madi was not being clear with him on what she wanted and needed. She at no point said... The closest we got to an explicit request or assertion is her saying... If you were to sleep with somebody else, it would be really hard for me to move forward in this. That statement is the most articulated. However, that is not the full truth. What we know now is A, he did not know that she was saving herself for marriage. B, she did not say, because of that dedication, I would find it challenging to be proposed to. She goes into that later on their date, which we'll get into. But at this airplane hangar conversation, she wasn't telling him that. And so, of course it's hard. It's hard for everyone. I can only imagine whether you are more monogamous-minded or even if you're more polyamorous-minded, it's still hard to see someone you care about or know that someone that you care about and might be then getting engaged to shortly, maybe having sex with other people a few days before.
Of course, yeah. I get that 100%.
So her saying, I don't know, I think it's going to be hard to move forward with this, that's like, well, yeah, it's hard for everybody. Mm-hmm. She never said explicitly,
nope.
It is due to my fundamental religious beliefs that would be a no for me moving forward. She did not say that. And then the way that she responded when he eventually told her, and I know we're kind of like skipping back and forth, but when he eventually told her, he was like, oh, like that was way more black and white than you presented. And we're not mind readers. You know, it's, and then I'll get out my soapbox in a second, I promise. I've had so many conversations with people in real life, separate from the show, just me having conversations, where I'll respond to something and say, I don't understand. And they'll say, well, you know what I mean. And it's like, no, I don't, because I'm not going to assume anything. I want to make sure that I understand. And so that means I want to know exactly what you're thinking, exactly what you're feeling, so that I can be on board with you. And to me, this conversation was one of those like, well, you get the gist, Peter, without overtly saying it. And if she's that confident in who she is, if she is that happy about who she is, then why is it so challenging for her to express this to him? And why didn't she tell him earlier that this was such an important piece? And why did you go on The Bachelor if him sleeping with other people within that short period of time is a full-on deal breaker. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. Sorry.
So, I focused on something else. She says actions speak louder than words. And what Rachel just mentioned is that she withheld information from him up until the point where she had to say it. Because she was either losing it, hanging on to the secret, because we all know how that feels when you hang on to a secret too long, and all of a sudden you need to come out with it. Her actions are speaking louder than words. She has withheld information that is massively important to her and her ability to move forward in a romantic sense with anybody in this world, even with the acknowledgement that we find out later on that she'd be okay if someone that she was seeing had had sex before. That's fine with her.
Right.
That's not her.
Which was a beautiful acknowledgement. I actually really loved that moment.
Absolutely. That's not her place, as she says, to put her expectations on others. And she keeps using this word expect a lot in expectations from her own perspective. So if she's going to go and use a sentence, actions speak louder than words, that is a pretty tone-deaf thing to say when you have chosen to withhold information that will shift the course of your relationship with this person permanently.
So truly, and this is what I wrote down at the time, I'm so glad, these were like, as my migraine was setting on, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
I said she didn't tell him it was for a religious reason, which she probably assumes he has put together based on her first in the moment interview in Australia, but he did not. So Pete reflects to the camera in his in the moment that he has not heard from Madi where her feelings are for him.
Yeah.
So then on top of that, she's not being super clear. So
Right.
she's the one who has not told him, I'm also falling in love with you, or I'm falling in love with you, right? Not that she should if she doesn't feel that way.
No.
But it's a combination of him not getting that validation that we know that he personally is like desperately craving and needing. And then on top of that, not being super clear for what her reasons are.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Well, and that's the end of my summarization of that, is that now he has to operate within her guidelines, which are fuzzy at best. Or he is going to damage their relationship in a way that he may or may not really understand because she hasn't told him, because she just kind of threw a bunch of words at him around what she expects for people in her relationship life. But when he tried to press further, she backed away. So he's left with a pretty shitty set of guidelines for something.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think that conceptually, so, and this is like a Bachelor world versus real life world thing. In real life, it makes complete logical sense to me, where if you were to be like, how do you feel about Kyle having sex with this other girl that you've lived in a house with for 7 weeks and then 6 days later proposing to you? In real life, I would probably be like, no. What
insane situation is that?
That sounds insane. In the Bachelor world, however, if he is fully feeling the feelings that he says he's feeling.
If he's feeling the feelings he's feeling?
Yes. So if he truly is feeling in love with 3 women, he absolutely gets that choice to explore those relationships on a physical, intimate level.
Absolutely.
And there is nothing inherently wrong with that. A, they're all STD screened, so you're not putting somebody at risk. B, as the person that he's going to pick at the end, wouldn't you rather know that he doesn't have questions or regrets about something? Like, newsflash, like Kyle and I both slept with people before we got together.
What?
Okay, anyway, so we'll continue.
So we get to Peter processing what Madison said. He's acknowledging that it's going to be more difficult. And then the contestants start showing up in their hotel room.
Yes.
So production did 2 things this episode that I am particularly... one really annoys me, and it's this. It's the housing of the women all together, because usually at this stage, the contestants have time to be alone, to really dig deep in their own processing, to work on themselves, to really kind of get comfortable as to where they're at. And then having the chance to go be intimate in the fantasy suites, or even if they don't have sex in the fantasy suites, they just talk about, religion and taxes and money and like all of that.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
That's a huge point around fantasy suites that I think not enough people talk about, is that a lot of times it's not just used for sex. It's often used to talk about things that you wouldn't want aired on TV. And so when they say we had this time alone, people just assume that they're insinuating sex. And it's not just that. I thought...
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So the first is the taking away their personal space at such a critical part of the format of the season, right? The second is, I could say this is a dick move by production, and it honestly is. However, it's only a dick move because of the person who it's being done to's own way of going about this season. The order in which the fantasy suites go, usually we don't know. They air them out of order, so we're not sure who's first or last to beat with overnight.
Yes.
But we're very intentionally shown Madison is the last of 3 to go, which means they put Peter in the position to be intimate before he got to Madison, who would have the problem, which would create the drama because she didn't open her mouth earlier in the season and tell him the actual things she's thinking and dealing with and afraid of. So now, production dicked her over by putting her last, so now she's facing her only fear, really.
Well, because production had to get it out of them.
Right.
So when was she going to tell him?
Well...
At the proposal, by the way?
Any other time in the season previously. So they did this to all 3 of them, put them all in the same room, and then they particularly picked on Madison. It wouldn't be this bad if she had gone out of her way and told him earlier, but now she made the bed, and now she is being made to sleep in it by production, and that's kind of sucked for her.
Well, and that's the thing is that I struggle with, on a personal level, both from a therapist view and as just a fan of The Bachelor and a viewer, I didn't mind that the fact that Madison was a virgin didn't come out until later. I actually thought that was nice because we look at people like Ashley I and Colton where literally all we knew about them for so long was that they had not had penetrative intercourse. And it's
so annoying.
Can we learn something else? This is not a badge of honor, whatever.
Right.
So I did not mind that didn't come out until later.
Yeah.
What I don't like is that it took until the week that is themed around intimacy for her to then say, oh, by the way,
right.
I have these expectations, not of myself, of you. So it's okay for her to say, I didn't want to tell you until we got to this point. She could have even told him in the fantasy suite, by the way, I have not had sex. I don't want to.
Right.
And she may have not wanted to air it. That's her prerogative. That is totally fine. But the fact that she had expectations for him and did not tell him until right before it's time to do that. And yes, production encourages the contestants to do certain things.
Sure.
But they have...
If that's so important for her and she knows her heart, which is a sentence she keeps saying...
Right.
You gotta do it.
Even Nick Viall has talked a lot about how production can encourage you. Yeah. You can still say no.
Absolutely.
Right? He even said that the reason why he only slept with Vanessa on his season when he was the Bachelor was because he, from early on, knew that Vanessa was the one. So if he had sex with the other women, he would have simply literally just been doing it to do it.
Right.
He was not trying to figure out how he felt. Peter's in a different position. Same thing with Ben Higgins. Yeah. Ben Higgins had sex with both JoJo and Lauren because he was truly trying to figure out who his person was.
Right. So, we'll get into the formula, we'll get into Hannah's date and all that, but there's one more thing I have to say about Madison. Because of everything that has built up to this moment, her choices, production's choices, a lot of her choices, she's now, for the first time, for me at least, because if you've watched the other episodes of the show, she's been my front runner pretty much leading up until last episode. All of a sudden, we are seeing a side of her that we have not seen. She is starting to say some fairly insensitive things. She is starting to unravel a little bit because now she's feeling the repercussions of her decisions. And it's not a great look. It's also one that I understand. We've all been there where you're having to kind of pay for something that you really didn't see this happening with. And all of a sudden, the things that she's beginning to say around her expectations on him, her life choices on him, it's not a good look. And one particular thing she said stuck out to me, and it really bothers me. Peter comes into the hotel room. They're like, oh, we're all here. He's like, haha, you're all here. I'm going to pick one of you and go now. Bye. It's Hannah Ann. She goes first. Because, keep in mind, usually the contestants don't know who's going when. They're just in isolation in a hotel room with a book and a journal and, I don't know, nothing. And all they do is just wait until they're called. But in this case, they had to see Hannah Ann leave. We
Which
get a voiceover.
is fucking torture.
Brutal. Oh. Oddly enough, I think Hannah handles it amazingly.
Yeah, Hannah Ann
Victoria,
for sure.
I don't know if she has feelings, and then Madison unravels. And so this is it.
Kyle's quoted the episode. I don't know if Victoria has feelings.
It's an open-ended question. I am open to hearing if she does.
I think she does, but we'll talk about that when
Madison says in an In the Moment interview, Peter is a big boy and just needs to trust him. And she needs to trust him, that he's a big boy. So she's suggesting that trusting him to stay closed off to physical stuff with other women. She basically is trusting that he has read between the lines. The use of the phrase, well, he's a big boy, he can do what I implied that he needs to do. That's kind of shitty to say. And I understand feeling emotionally wounded, feeling insecure, feeling worried. You're being pestered by production. You're stressed out. I get all of it. You made this happen to yourself, though, in a lot of ways. So it's starting to wear down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it's just an overall good lesson for all of us in real life outside of the Bachelor bubble to remember to be super explicit when we have hopes and expectations or desires of somebody in our life.
Yep.
Whether that is a romantic partner, whether that is a friend or a family member, they're not just going to know what we want by kind of saying it or hinting at it. We need to be explicit.
Yeah.
Like, if I want a glass of water, it's much easier for me to say, Kyle, can you please get me a glass of water? Instead of being like, I'm thirsty.
I want a beverage. Because then you'd get whatever beverage I felt like giving you.
Right. The more explicit we can be, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
A fun summary of his date with Hannah Ann.
So he goes out on his date with Hannah Ann, and they go jet skiing, which is not the best date for like talking.
Lame date, but they managed to have fun. They both have Labrador happiness.
Yes. That's true.
They just zoom around. Cool.
They look like they're having a lot of fun. Frankly, I was like happy for both of them that they were just enjoying existing. And then they pull up onto a beach, and Hannah Ann does my favorite thing that all of the women have done. Like, this stands out, and props to Hannah Ann. At 23, she's gotten a lot of shit from people, both on the show and off the show and commentary, about being, like stoic and like too immature.
Right.
This girl literally does what no one else has done and asks him how he is doing, says, if I put myself in your shoes, it would be a really hard week. And then she says, whatever happens this week, I just want you to know I will still be here. She starts to get emotional and says, I believe in us, and when you believe in something, it overrides the fear. I was baffled by this level of empathy and compassion coming from Hannah Ann. Was anybody else surprised by this?
Oh,
this was a side of her that I had not seen yet.
Well, and that is the stuff that I always get frustrated around with the show, because they show us so little of so many people for so long. Like, that night that, I forget, it was like 2 episodes ago, I think, when she and Peter are having dinner, and he walks away because he's having a hard time emotionally connecting to her. And then they go outside, we see, 10 seconds of conversation, and he's like, this is what I needed. Now I'm happy. And
we all thought it was just because she cried.
This could have been what we're not seeing.
Right.
And the fact that she's like, hey, how you doing? I know it's tough. I'm here for you. I'm going to be here no matter what. If you want to keep me going, I am here for you. I will be standing there if you want to propose. Like, I'm locked in. He has not gotten that, and spoiler alert, does not really get that from Victoria or Madison.
Yeah.
Hannah Ann is like, here I am. Here's my empathy. We connect. I'm in it. Let's do this. And honestly, it was really impressive. And out of the final 3, she is now my personal choice.
So some people are saying in the chat that there are people talking that Hannah Ann only said that because she knew that Madison would say the opposite.
How did she know that?
Well, because she had talked to her and she knew that she was going to have the conversation.
I thought that conversation happened after the date.
Right, but they've already talked about...
Okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't heard that. I basically...
Pretty I mean, if she's truly, like, it's pretty conniving, right? Like, that's pretty...
Yeah, and I also... if she really wanted to be, like, conniving about it, she could have gone about it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
It did not...
Mischievous. I don't think she's mischievous enough to really pull off, like...
So, this is so interesting. So many of you guys in the chat think that she's playing the game. You don't think that she was sincere. That's really interesting. I read it as being sincere, but again, like, we don't know her.
Well, this is the way I see it, is that I feel that for all of the flaws and all the things I don't like, Victoria's being relatively authentic herself. Like, she's really struggling just to exist in this.
This episode, yeah.
Yeah. Madison is doing her thing. If Hannah Ann is doing this as a gameplay move, she's an incredible actress. Like, because usually there's been plenty of conversations over the seasons that we've watched and done the show where you can tell they're bullshitting. Like, oh, it's amazing, I'm so connected, blah, blah, blah. I perceived her as being honest, but if she's lying, then wow, that's amazing. And also, Peter may have actually gotten the worst casting in history of the franchise yet.
I mean, I think he did anyway. However, I will say...
Well, worse than Hannah Brown. I mean, we're getting Hannah Brown level of bad right now. If one of these people has a boyfriend on the side...
It's the same level.
With Victoria, I'm not too surprised.
It's the same level. I do think that Hannah Ann meant what she said.
Yeah, I agree.
I do. I really do. And I may eat my words later, but I'm gonna stand by my intuition on that one.
Absolutely. So we get to the dinner part of the date, and they exchange, he tells her he's falling in love, and he thanks Hannah Ann for never doubting him in this process. And that, to me, is, a good thing to say at this point in this stage. It also has a lot to do with how this season has gone, where he has had to, own up to things that I don't really feel like were his responsibility, how he's had to kind of navigate a lot of external issues. So I think that he's acknowledging to her in that sentence, maybe I'm just reading into it too much, that he's like, hey, this has been kind of a ride, and now we're both here, and that's nice. So thanks.
Yeah, Hannah Ann talks then about how she would rather walk away from the whole experience with a broken heart than with regret. And it just seems like she's continually reminding him and giving him permission to explore the process, and she's not going anywhere. And here's the thing is, I think that she meant it partially because she's clearly a fan of the show. She understands the process of the show and has watched the show before.
Yeah.
She's also friends with Hannah G outside of this, which is how she got connected to casting. I truly think that if you go on this show, the chances of getting the chances of getting to Fantasy Suite Week going on the show are 3 in 30. Okay, so that's 10? Is that 10%?
Oh, is that even talking about getting on the show? Not even the massive
No. I'm saying
people?
once you're on the show.
Oh, yeah. 1 in 30.
3 in 30. Because there's
3 in 30. Yeah, 3 in 30.
So 3 out of the 30 people
1 out of 10
get
that's
there.
That's crazy saying 3 out of 30.
So that's insane. Yeah, so it's a 1%.
Yeah.
No, 10% chance that you'll get to Fantasy Suites.
We are not good at math in that show.
Psychology, not math. So the thought of, if I get there, what will I do?
Yeah.
Is probably so far off in the distance. However, you got to think about, if I get there, will I be okay with this person potentially sleeping with 2 other people? And if we think about Caitlyn's season as the Bachelorette, she had sex with Nick Viall way before Fantasy Suites. So going into this process, just like dating in real life, is, am I okay with the person that I'm dating potentially sleeping with other people? And the fact of the matter is that I don't know why I'm even catching myself. We're talking about this as if, like, there's kissing over here and then, like, there's sex over here.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there's a lot of stuff in between that can go on.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So
yes,
they have a good conversation at dinner. He tells her, I really appreciate this from him, he tells Hannah Ann that her dad asked him not to tell her that he loved her. Until he said at the end, like, until he really meant it, or till the end of the show or something. And he told her that I chose to tell you because of that like I knew what I know and I wanted to tell you.
I was glad he told her about the conversation.
Absolutely.
Too.
So he reflects to her that he feels comforted and supported by her, and he brings up that the process has been hard and she is appreciated by him for understanding the process and for really navigating it well. That's, I think all three of these contestants have watched the show before. I think Hannah Ann is a fan of the show.
For sure.
And so I think but that's the thing. If you're a professional athlete, you watch the tapes of you playing. You watch other teams play, and you learn how the game is played to be more effective. You see how other people do it in various aspects. Honestly, I look at Hannah Ann the same way, where she's been watching this sport done forever, and now she's playing it pretty well. I also think that she's there for the right reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I also think that the whole concept of being there for the right reasons isn't a thing anymore. Like, can we just all acknowledge that people who go on any reality TV show that's popular,
Instagram
the
followers.
byproduct of it is a social following. What you choose to do with that afterwards is completely on you.
Totally.
But, like, nobody is going on The Bachelor 100% just to find love.
Totally.
Like, no one. And that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's an and situation. It's like, cool, I'll get to travel, meet people, gain a platform for myself, possibly have a positive impact in the world, make money.
Yeah.
And I could meet the person that I want to be with forever.
And you can sell some
cool
hair product afterwards. Or, like, diarrhea tea.
So, what I thought was very strange, though, was we did not get footage of Hannah Ann and Peter in the morning.
Well, hold on. There's some things that happen that we gotta pay attention to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Well, they get the key to the fantasy suite. She tells them, I'm in love with you. Let's go to the fantasy suite. I'll just speed through it. They go back to the hotel. We see Madison and Victoria doing a little arguing, conversation about like what they think the show is and how it's going to work. The amount of time we see the foreplay going on between Hannah Ann and Peter is a little much. There was the Titanic see-through glass scene, which, like, as all fantasies go, totally fine. Tell you what, I want the people who complained about the Super Bowl halftime show to be upset about that fucking bullshit that happened, seeing Hannah Ann pressed up against the glass by Peter with the smoky thing. You can see all the stuff's going on. I hope you are still upset. And I hope ABC gets 1,000 complaints from you people about that, because that's so inappropriate to have on television.
He's being sarcastic, if you couldn't tell.
Ridiculous. Anyway, we don't get the morning after thing, though. That was odd to me. That was really odd.
It was super weird. Also, J Jobs, thanks for the name shout out. Appreciate that. So it was the morning, and it was very weird. She just walks back into the girls' room, and literally all I could think of was having a crush, like being younger and having a crush on the same guy as a friend. And watching that person, if I were in a room, watching that person walk back in knowing that they just spent the night with them, regardless of if they had sex or did anything in between.
Right.
Just knowing that they had this extensive off-camera time. And me having to sit there on camera, knowing that there's 30 million people and people with podcasts that are going to be talking
and examining
about this
everything.
And examining your every reaction. You walk back in and you're sitting there like, okay, I don't want to look jealous. I don't want to look mad. I need to be supportive. Like,
yeah.
It's so stressful.
You know what I thought about? And maybe this is like my brain versus your brain. But I thought about, so we didn't see the morning after. Usually you get like snuggling time in the morning. There's the camera, which is always a little awkward. Or they eat fruit for some reason. It's always like a bowl of fruit in the bed.
In bed, yeah.
Always. Because all I know I want is like pineapple, like sticky residue on my hands when I'm like trying to sit in bed and like get to know someone better.
And then almost every time they're like, couldn't you just see this?
Forever.
Couldn't you see this forever?
Gross.
Like if every morning you wake up, there's not like a big drool stain on my pillow and I didn't snore the whole night and like kick you.
I mean, if you want to self-identify as those characteristics of sleeping, then yes. Here's what I thought about. Let's, because we don't know exactly what happened specifically with anyone of that, whatever. Peter just said at the end of the episode there was intimacy. We don't know who with what and how and where. Hannah Ann, let's theorize this. She had just gone and had sex with Peter, spent the night in the hotel room, and she's coming back. After, I think that I'm speaking from my past history, after going and spending the night at somebody else's house and having sex, when I come home, I want to take a shower and, like, have a cup of coffee and, like, rest and, like, just chill. And she comes back to cameras and two other women who are dating the same guy she is, and she doesn't get a moment to be like, I just gotta go, like, chill or something.
Or, like, my leg's sore.
Right, like, that, to me, it's all I'm thinking about. I'm like, she probably wants to be left the fuck alone right now. Go take a shower, go lay in bed for a little while and just relax. Anything. Because even if they didn't have sex, I bet she's fucking exhausted. I bet they're up till 4 a.m. talking about everything you could talk about.
If they slept at all.
Things you don't want to talk about on television, religion, politics, debt you're in, all the things that go into life, family trauma that you didn't use for currency earlier in the season, like, whatever.
That'd be me. I'd be like, so here are my student loans. This is the situation.
Yeah.
This is, I don't ever not want to live in New York. I am liberal because I believe in human rights, and right now that's the only way to support human rights. And if you don't, then we're probably not going to make it through tomorrow morning. That would be my fantasy suite.
Right.
I'm just reading some of the comments here.
Scroll up real quick. Let me see. Scroll.
Yeah. What you trying to see?
I don't know. Whatever.
Okay. So then we get into Victoria's date. And yes, J-Jobs, we'll get to Victoria now. So, Victoria's date. They meet up, and he validates her right away by stating he wants to move forward and not look back. Which, all in all, cool. Generally speaking, not specific to this situation, it's a good tactic, like, relationship-wise, if you want to move forward from something, to just right off the top be like, hey, we had this and this happen. I really want to put that behind us and move on today. Generally speaking. In this particular situation, did we ever get clarity, and I'm using that word intentionally, because we know how much the show loves that word now. Did we ever get clarity if Victoria did what she was accused of? Like, was there...
Don't think so.
Was there anything? Also, somebody in the chat just mentioned that I said something intolerant, and I'm curious what it was, because super open mind. I don't know what I said. Just let me know so I can clarify if it came across that way.
Clarify for the podcast listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, so when he's like, I just want to move on, in my mind, I was like, okay, but do you have answers?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and so in that moment, because I know you actually took notes during the Victoria date, because I didn't. I just took one little one at the end because I just struggled. I was also making dinner, I think, at the same time we had that on.
Oh, okay. Let me just clarify. I'm not saying that only liberals... Okay, so my comment was that in my fantasy suite, I would talk about politics and bring up the fact that, like, being liberal and supporting human rights. Let me totally clarify. There are 100% people that are more conservative in their political views that support human rights. 100%. In fact, there are many in my family. What I'm saying is that right now in our current political climate, for me personally, I would need to marry someone if I were in the market to be married. I would need to marry someone that identifies as liberal for how liberal my beliefs are around reproductive rights, around LGBTQ rights, around religion not being in schools, climate change, those topics that unfortunately have been so segregated now and polarized. And that's why I'm explaining what I said. So I apologize if that came out intolerant. My dad is a conservative, and I love him deeply. Okay, we can continue now. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I was going to say, this is not backtracking. This is fully explaining what you were saying after someone noticed something that didn't sound like what you usually say.
Correct.
So by identifying it, you're helping further the conversation, so then Rachel's able to talk it out fully and share her complete thought on it rather than using it as an example in a sentence. You saying that it's backtracking actually further creates an issue, because if we think that when someone says something, there's a question of it and then a reiteration and an explanation and understanding formed, that's how people move forward and learn and grow from each other. Instead of saying, you said that, I heard it, you said it once, I'm done. Because if I got held accountable for everything I said one time, nightmare.
Well, and that's why I asked, is because I don't ever want to be intolerant. It's really important to me to be inclusive of everybody, no matter what their religious beliefs or non-religious beliefs are.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate what it is. Anyway, we're going to continue on because we're going to focus on The Bachelor, and I don't want to get into a political thing here. So the quote of the season happens at this point. The absolute quote of the season. Peter says to the camera, "I love everything about my relationship with Victoria, except for when it comes to communicating and having tough talks." What is a relationship without communication? I love everything about my relationship with Victoria, except for when it comes to communicating.
I love banana cream pie, except the bananas.
And cream.
What the fuck is that sentence? So, I don't even...
Yeah, I know.
Do more descriptions of the date, because I have one. Something connected with me during this date, and I had this huge epiphany as to what's been going on continuously for the last couple of episodes, but I want to get through this before I do that.
Okay, so they go on a helicopter ride, which is lovely. They see the Gold Coast. I have wanted to go there. This confirmed that I really want to go there. It's a great advertisement for the Gold Coast in Australia.
Absolutely.
They land the helicopter and have champagne at the top of a waterfall, which, again, gorgeous.
Right.
Actually, their date was my favorite of the dates. They're like, I loved their dinner outside, the candles.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So she tells him that, she says, "I know you gave me the rose," which means that, like, you want me here, but I'm really scared that you're going to give up. And he says, "Today's been going good." That's his quote. That's not me using improper grammar. And she says, "I know, we haven't even fought yet." And this is actually what gave me flashes back to Luke P.
Oh.
This moment. So I know there's been so many parallels that people are trying to draw between Madison and Luke P., which we'll get into on her date, because they are so different. And it's not because they're different genders. It's how they handled the whole situation.
Absolutely.
But this reminded me of Hannah and Luke P., because she would be like, "Oh my God, we had such a good 2 hours. We haven't fought yet."
Oh, yeah, that was...
And, like, grasping onto this time where there's no conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I was like, oh, God. And then we cut back to Hannah and Madi talking in the room. And this is where we see, oh, wow, yeah, two thumbs down. It's all
right. We usually get about 5 or 6 by the end of the week.
I apologize, you guys, if that comment came off intolerant. That was very much not my intention. And the reason why I asked to clarify is because I'm a person, too, and I want to learn when I say something that is could be better. So, anyway.
I think you explained perfectly.
Okay. So, the reason why I'm having trouble letting it go is because, and anybody who will listen to this and knows me as a person, I am so pro-tolerance as long as it doesn't hurt other people. And so I would never want to unintentionally say something that creates intolerance. And if I do, I like it to be pointed out to me and told to me just in a way that is kind and compassionate so that I can learn from it. That's all. Okay. So we cut to Hannah Ann and Madi talking, and this is where Hannah Ann asks Madi if she got to share with Peter about her saving herself for marriage. And Hannah Ann is pretty baffled at the fact that Madi has not told him.
And that's why I don't think that she's lying or making up I don't think she's navigating this, like, as a skilled player that much. I mean, she was legitimately like, what are you saying? That you didn't tell him about any of this? It was, to me, it was very edifying around Hannah Ann's time on the show. And it also plays into really how up in her own head Madison is, because she's not even being honest with herself. The other contestants know more than Peter does about her and what she wants and expects, in air quotes, out of this experience for her.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah, so then we cut back to Peter and Victoria, and they go into the evening portion.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I loved Victoria's dress. I really loved the setup for dinner. And frankly, this conversation at dinner was the best conversation that they have had, which, very low bar.
Yeah.
But it still was. It was totally real.
Really low bar.
Totally real.
That's like if you've had, I don't know, some crappy, cheap canned beer your entire life, and then you go get something fresh from a brewery that's an incredibly well-made craft brewery. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been having shitty stuff the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I have a question for everybody listening. So Peter makes a toast, and he says, cheers to you and I showing up to fight and not giving up. Here's cheers to you and I showing so much fight and not giving up. So my question for you all is, in real life, when is it time to stop fighting and walk away? Because he has a point to where there can be these like hiccups on things.
Absolutely.
And bumps in the road.
Totally.
And that's normal. Where is the line? And I know it's different for everybody in every relationship. Where is that line? Like, when is fighting for something not healthy anymore? And when is it helpful?
I think at the time, if you are fighting for something, at the time that you have to actually go against your own personal values, morality, and ethics, when you actually have to sacrifice a part of who you are or a part of what you really want in order to maybe come out the other end with something that you'd like during the time, I think that's where I would draw the line. I would not compromise on a particular set of values that I have. I wouldn't compromise on sacrificing friendships or personal property.
Like me trying to control your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. There's actually, and that happened.
Eleanor just says now.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, that's just not something that I would do. So I think that, and that's the problem about the show, because you don't know what they're going through specifically. You don't know how the production's talking to them. We don't see enough to really get the idea where you're like, wow, you got to walk away right now. If, based on what I've seen, were I in Peter's position, Victoria would have gone home a long time ago, just because she's not focused on anyone but herself, and that's my own thing that I'll get.
Yeah.
And so let's get through. They go to the fantasy suite.
So I love this. So Megan says it's time to stop fighting when the other person is not respecting your boundaries. We have when the relationship stops growing and progressing and you speak repeatedly about the same things. That's a great one, Nicole. That's a really great one. Carla says when you can never find a solution, that there are fights that are never really solved. Yep. 100%. When the relationship is no longer growing. Love this. Thank you guys for your input around this. I think it's really interesting for us to all have conversations around this. I agree with Loved by You here that Peter does pride himself on a person that doesn't give up on other people. And at some point, that people-pleasing tendency turns into enabling, right? Like, we see this. We talked a little bit about the archetypes of people-pleasing and narcissist.
Yeah.
And we see this a lot of times with people-pleasing and addiction, and the enabling around addiction and wanting to be able to help somebody. And sometimes it's that walking away that actually helps them heal eventually. Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's get to the end of their date, because I would have summarized what happened earlier.
Okay. So she says that she knows that he knows how she is, but she wants him to know why she is that way. And she tells him that she had a 3.5-year relationship where her partner, who was a he, did not ask her about her own feelings. And that's really sad to me. This was helpful information to know about Victoria.
Yes.
And she didn't realize that when Peter did it, she actually got defensive because when her ex did it, there was something wrong.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. And she says that she didn't feel good enough in her last relationship. And he asks her, what was it that made you feel not good enough? And she says, I don't know. And he says, you do know. And she says, I don't know what you want from me. And this is where he calls her out and says, you're getting in your head. I'm not judging you. I genuinely want to know. I genuinely want to know what is going on. And at this point, he's being very direct and yet very patient. Mm-hmm. And this is a great example of how the words I don't know ends a conversation.
Yeah.
So I see this in my therapy sessions and my coaching sessions. When we say I don't know to answer a question about ourselves, like about something that we think or feel, it just completely shuts down the conversation. And so at that point, he's like, you do know. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated him pushing that. So he calls out, that she's getting in her head. And this is where we really, really, really see that she has some deep fucking wounds from past relationships, romantic or otherwise.
Right.
And he asks her to not push him away, to be confident about the fact that she deserves love. And then we cut back to Madi pacing in her hotel, and we go to commercial, and then we're in the morning with Victoria. So that goes to you.
Yes, they go to the fantasy suite. So one thing that we got sidetracked on with the conversation earlier, from the beginning of the date, is when Peter's like, I just want to move forward, and blah, 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 and that's when you asked me, like, did we ever get clarity? No.
Yeah.
What we got is Victoria getting what she wanted. She got a free pass on all of her bullshit. And so she looks so happy because she finally gets what she needs. Peter's going to move on from all of the stuff she did and said, and now he wants to look forward in a positive way. And they're just together so she can stay on her status quo in her line. And I didn't care for her response to that. I felt like there was a second part of that happiness with her where she's like, oh, thank God, he's not going to ask me about the past.
Yeah, it definitely was like this combination of I understood more of where she was coming from her past.
Absolutely.
And, girl, go to therapy and help yourself before you put yourself in a situation like this.
Right. So, and that's the thing. This is what prompted my epiphany. It's at the end. They're changing the keys for the fantasy suite. And she says, well, I think he's laughing. He's like, ha ha, we're going to the fantasy suite. Like, I don't think anyone else has put me through this much, issue and pain and blah. Okay, then it clicked for me. Ready? Peter has said this multiple times. Relationships are hard, and they aren't always fun and easy and simple. There's challenge, and I don't want just fun and easy. I know the challenge there, and I want that. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah is what I said. So, this is my epiphany. Yeah, you're right, Peter. Relationships are hard. There will be arguments. There will be challenge. There will be bad, shitty days, weeks, months, whatever. But you don't have to make that happen right away. He's overcorrecting for the future by acting it now. Because Victoria has pushed him to the limit of argument every single week. He's like, oh, well, this is what a real relationship is like. Because I know these things come up at some point. So that leads to the confusion when he was talking to Kelly, and Kelly's like, this doesn't have to be so hard. We can just have fun and chill. This is a date. Like, can we have a date and not talk about... And earlier in that episode, when she said that, she was afraid she didn't have a sob story to tell him. So she's acknowledging that everyone's playing sob stories for currency. Then she's like, can we just be on a date and have fun? And he's like, where's the challenge here? I need you to take this more seriously. So he's jumping the gun on the serious challenge because Victoria is the only one who's created problem after problem after problem. He's probably looking at this. I don't even know if it's a conscious decision. This could be all subconscious because there is constant challenge there. And he has said, 10, 15 times this season? that relationships are hard and there's challenge and it's not just fun and easy.
Mm-hmm.
He's overcorrecting, and that's why she's still here. Every single time I kept saying...
That's really interesting, Kyle.
Maybe he just wants to have sex with her, maybe it's his penis thinking, like, I don't know. That's also very subjective to men, and that's obviously making kind of a joke out of it. This makes a lot of sense, though, because if that's his lens of relationships, which is not incorrect, but he's taking it too far. He's making the challenge exist before the actual difficulty of the challenge gets there, because the actual difficulty of having bad arguments and conversations and hard weeks in relationships is because you've had the time to build a foundation, grow together. So when you're growing together and you've been all together for so long, then having conflict hurts a lot. But you're speed dating, and you're going around like crazy. It hasn't been that long, and she's created problems every time. So that's why I think she's around, is because he thinks that's what a relationship is. Challenge and pain and easy, but it's not.
So then the question is, where did he learn that? Like, where did he get this idea along the line? And none of us probably have the answer. If you do listening, please tell us.
I could guess.
I think that Victoria F. is a really excellent example of how looks and being a objectively pretty female in our country, specifically in our country, you can get away with a lot more. And it makes me really frustrated. And this was confirmed with this comment when Victoria comes back to the hotel, just to kind of move things forward, but also reflect on this. Hannah Ann says to her, "You look so skinny."
Oh, yeah. We didn't hear that the first time.
And Victoria says, "Thank you." And I just put my head in my hand. Like, first of all, looking skinny is not a measure of beauty, but our culture says it is. That is continuing. I wish we had Amanda here to talk about it. Oh, yeah. I was so upset that they aired this comment. I was so pissed that they aired this comment. And then it really made me think about this whole concept of the archetype of Victoria and that relationship. It's this very objectively attractive person, physically attractive, that the physical connection and chemistry, the hormones just completely flood and blind you of what's actually going on. And I think I really think many of us have been in those type of relationships.
I've done that.
Yeah, I have too.
100% I did that.
And tell, if you want to in the chat, let us know if you've been in those too, where the passion is just it may not be the best thing for you, but you are just you can't not.
Oh, no.
You just can't not.
That situation for me, I actively knew it was a bad idea. And yet there was the level of physical connection that I was like, okay, well, I'm conscious this could go blow up my face later on.
And I think that's the problem with Peter right now, is that I don't think he's aware
of what
is happening. And the fact that he thought that was a really good conversation is
that's not a good conversation.
A little concerning.
And they even identify that their conversations haven't been good, and they joke about it, and that is not good. That's a problem for the future. So we get to Madison's date. I'm tired of talking.
So the date portion of their date is lovely. Although the whole time I'm thinking, can you just tell him? Can you just tell him? What are you going to tell him? Can you just tell him?
I did notice something. As soon as we find out what they're doing on their date, they're climbing to the top of this really tall building. That's cool. I also noticed that each of these dates, whether or not it was Peter's intention or production's intention, fit each girl perfectly. Hannah Ann's was silly, relaxing, kind of dumb, but also fun. They just jet ski around and talk for a while. Victoria's, they just go to a romantic spot and be romantic the entire time. And then Madison, the athletic one, they do some athletic stuff. They climb a building, they test their adrenaline, and then they go to dinner. Each one kind of matches up with the contestant. I thought that was clever, if not intentional.
You guys in the chat are amazing. I love our listeners, and I just love you guys so much. Okay, so they climb this building. There are so many puns of, new heights and love and fear. However, I will say, this was the hottest makeout of the entire season.
Yeah.
Was Madison and Peter on the top of this building. The passion that was coming off of their makeout. Kyle and I looked at each other unprompted and were like,
yeah, I won't turn it on right now.
Like, it was so passionate.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that the passion seems the actual, like, most complete between the two of them, and yet she is the one who is holding back in that way.
Yep.
It was really, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, that adds to what we were talking about this a little bit off of the show, but going back and forth. I understand that Madison, being she, is clinging to this identity that she has built for herself.
Yeah.
And when she references choosing to save herself for marriage, which I hate that phrase personally.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
But we got it. That's how she's phrasing it, so that's why I want to use it.
So I get that she's built this identity for herself. When she says, I chose to do this, blah, 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 it kind of sounds like she made the decision a long time ago. And for a 23-year-old, a long time ago starts to get into your teenage years. Mm-hmm. And what I see with the girl who's making out with him on top of this building, which is objectively very hot, then to before the last 2 episodes, right? Let's skip back 3 episodes. They're connecting. They're really physically engaged.
Who?
It's Madison and Peter.
Oh, yeah. They have been the whole time.
And then I see her now struggling to find this and having these words start coming out of her that we haven't heard. Expectations, values, all of this. I see someone who's struggling with the identity that they have built like walls around themselves in the past. And now, what they're feeling is starting to chip away at the walls they've built for themselves. So I see Madison starting to struggle with her decisions in the past. And because of this decision is so valued by her and her community and by many people, their own prerogative.
And
no
that's
judgment.
okay. Yeah.
Right. But because this is such a intense meaning put on something, now, if she were to go against this identity she's built, who is she? Who, like, literally. And I wonder if that's the question inside of her head. I've built my identity to be this, and now my body and my heart, maybe, is telling me something different. I think she's really struggling with her identity.
I agree with you based on the fact that it's been so challenging for her to communicate it. And not just in the timing of it, which, loved by you, we talked about that a little bit earlier in the episode. But I agree with you because of her lack of confidence around expressing it to Peter.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that it is who she is. I believe that she completely has stood by it. And I think that this is challenging it. Because, like she even said on their date, which we'll get into in just a minute, about how, like, she had to push herself to even be able to watch her or watch him kiss other women.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we get into this evening portion, and we're going to go over the definition of an ultimatum, we're going to talk about the parallels that people are making between her and Luke P, and we're going to get into some broken eggshell territory. We're definitely going to be, like, walking gently around this. But before we do, we just want to thank our sponsor, Stand Up New York, which this is not Stand Up New York. No, this is our bedroom. Yeah. But they're still where we are supposed to be every week. That might be changing soon. We have some stuff happening in the works, some surprises for y'all. And if you can just take this moment to give this video a thumbs up if you are here with us. If you gave it a thumbs down, that's cool. If you don't like it, just let us know why. We'd love to know how we can get better. Similar to what I was saying before, we are all just humans doing our best. I know I'm trying my best, and I know that Kyle does too. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we may do or say things that you just really disagree with. And the only way that we can learn as people, that you can learn as people, is to have those conversations around it. So thank you so much for bringing these things up. I know that the chat got a little heated. I think that it is completely fine to express if you dislike something that we say. In fact, I encourage it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here, for listening, for it's just thank you. So, but be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe on a podcast platform. Okay. So,
let's do it.
An ultimatum. This is the definition. A final demand or statement of terms, the rejection of which will result in retaliation or a breakdown in relations.
Ooh.
Okay, so I'm going to read that one more time.
Yeah.
A final demand or statement of terms. Okay, so a statement of terms in this case is what it was.
Right.
The rejection of which, so if the statement of terms or demand is rejected, will result in either retaliation or a breakdown of relations. So Maddie's saying, if you sleep with, or if you are physically intimate with other people on this show, I can no longer continue. That would be a statement of terms, the rejection of which ending in a breakdown of relations.
So that is the definition, in case we haven't summarized this in our own heads, that is the definition of an ultimatum that she is giving to Peter while also saying, I don't want to give you an ultimatum.
Correct. Now, I believe that both things are true. I think that many people don't necessarily take the time to look up what the words that they're saying mean.
No?
Right? Like, I've definitely used words and then have been like, oh, that was not the best word that I could have used there.
Yeah.
I do believe that Maddie is trying her best to not... I think what she's saying is, I don't want to control your behavior. But this is what it is for me. Right. And I think that the term ultimatum has been used to villainize and used to say, it's that or me.
Right.
And I think that is where she was coming from saying that.
Right.
However, it by definition is 100% an ultimatum. And the biggest difference between the way that Madi has handled this and the way that Luke P. handled it on Hannah's season. Some key differences. Number one, Luke P. was a misogynistic asshole the entire season who did things like gaslight Hannah, who did things like lie to Hannah. He did things throughout the whole season that were icky and horrible and borderlining on emotional abuse. Whereas Maddie's biggest negative is that she held this in and didn't tell him. And that's not a good thing. I wish she would have told him earlier, but she's not done anything malicious or overtly mean to anybody. So that's a big difference. Yeah. Number two, we just recently rewatched the Luke P. Hannah Brown fantasy suite dinner conversation where she sends him home because we were giving our friends context for
does not
part
get
of the show.
Easier to watch, by the way.
And the thing is he presents it as an ultimatum, but goes back on it. So he says, if you slept with one of these other guys, I'm not going to be able to continue. And then he's like, but we can maybe work past it if it's like a one-time oops. And then starts a slip up. Yeah. And then he starts to backpedal into well, I don't actually want to go home. Whereas I really do believe that Madison is earnest in her ultimatum in terms of, I don't think I can continue.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree she's being earnest.
Are there any other differences for you? And I'm going to catch up in the comments.
I see this as Madison's struggle in this is a result of what we were talking about earlier. She made the bed, now she has to sleep in it. She withheld information that would be drastically changing for their dynamic this entire time. Had she, I don't know how it would have gone if she had gone to him earlier and been like, hey, so this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling really connected to you, we have since the first date, whatever, when I met your family. It's going to be really difficult for me if you're intimate with the other people, and I just want to share that with you. I don't know if I have a solution or what to do about it, but I'm telling you that I have these feelings for you, and due to those, and my own choices, which, by the way, I'm saving myself for marriage, I'll really struggle with that, and I don't know what to do.
Yes.
That's obviously a very well-articulated and mature way of going about it, coming from years of my own personal experience and training and work and all of that. Yes, she's not going to say all those things, and it wouldn't be aired on camera because it's too good for the show to continue.
And she still articulated it better than Luke did.
Absolutely.
Now, what I don't like is the fact that Luke is vilified for stating the ultimate. So I want to be like really careful here. I don't like that we're looking at just Luke's ultimatum and just Maddie's ultimatum. Because yes, they come from a similar place. However, their overall being needs to be taken into account.
Yes.
And their intent and delivery and care and love. That's it. Like,
well, and there's this. Well, it comes into character. It's character judgment is where we're at this point, because as a person, he did a lot of things that are pretty reprehensible on the show, and Madison hasn't. So she is struggling with something that she could have been more honest about earlier, which could have helped the situation. Whereas Luke was just terrible, 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 and then the icing on the cake, which is the real reason I think that Hannah sent him home, is that he weaponized religion against her. See, in this case,
Luke
Madi
did.
is going to Peter and saying, hey, we're both people of faith. I have this stronger set of beliefs that I put in for myself a long time ago. And Peter even reflects it at the dinner date that we'll get into in a second. He's like, I see you as a person of faith. I am too, but not like that much. Like, I have a different version of it for myself where it's a little less intense, but that's cool with you, whatever. Whereas at the end of Hannah Brown and Luke's time, he even said, can I pray over you? And she's like, no, get away from me. He started taking religion and using it as a tool. And
saying that she was not a good
Christian.
Like, judging her religious beliefs based on his. And Madi has not done that.
And and Peter is not doing it to Madi either in return. They're being very respectful around it. And that's one of the reasons we went so hard on Luke, because he was a piece of shit. So,
well, and I think everybody went so hard on Luke.
Yeah.
Now, I really appreciate Peter's response in all of this to her. I thought that he handled this very well. Yeah. I was telling Kyle, if I had been in Peter's position, honestly, I would have been pissed. My initial response would have been frustration and annoyance that I was not told this earlier.
Yes.
That I was not told that someone that I brought to Fantasy Suites was saving herself for marriage. Because if that were a deal breaker for me, which, speaking as like Rachel as a woman who exists in this world, that is a deal breaker for me personally. For me personally, I want to have sex with someone before I get married.
Yes.
For some people, it's the opposite, right? It's a deal breaker to have sex before.
Totally.
There's no judgment. There's no good, bad, right, wrong. It's what's best for each individual person. Knowing Peter and knowing that for him, he has had sex. He has talked about how important it is for him to have sex before he gets married.
Hannah found condoms in his car.
And the windmill stuff. I wish that Madi had just been a little bit more direct and had told him sooner.
Yeah.
And even at the airport hangar, just had been like, listen, I'm uncomfortable. This is super awkward. I just need to tell you.
Oh, there's so many ways she could have handled that better at the airport hangar. She could have been like, hey, so I'm freaking out. I have been holding this in. I don't know why. I was really worried about it. Now I'm up against the fence because I know what's happening after this. I'm freaking out, and I want to know what to do and how we can handle this together as a couple.
Yes.
Because that's what they are, technically. That would have given him the opportunity. That's the olive branch for him to pull her out of the munchies in. That's the chance to go through and heal something that he doesn't know is actually a problem. And I would be so annoyed, and I would be in the same position you were in. I'd be so annoyed if it got to this point and someone's like, oh, by the way, your actions hurt me, and that's the way it is. Also, it's my choice to not do this, and if you do what I don't want to do, then I'm upset at you, and we're not going to be able... It would be so challenging. It would be an immediate deal breaker for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think that this is, J Jobs makes a great point in the chat, which we kind of touched on earlier, which Peter still had to, more thumbs down. Peter still had to infer what Madison actually wanted. And that's where it got really challenging. I also do think that this comes back to an overall societal issue of not knowing how to communicate. Because this is a really hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
Right? And we do not get taught how to have any conversation, let alone challenging ones, about religion and sex and politics and money and these things that can be very heated for people based on their experience. And so
Well, and that gets back to, to back up your point, Peter and Victoria thought they had good conversations on their date.
Right.
That's not good conversation.
No.
They've had horrible communication. We don't get taught how to do it.
Right.
So this part of the conversation where they're at dinner talking about the decisions and how she's feeling and whatever, this comes back to this incongruency between what she's saying and what she's wanting. So she apologizes to him first for putting him in a hard spot. She's acknowledging, I liked it, it started out well, and then it went right off the hill.
It went so well at the
I was
beginning.
like, oh my god, she's identifying that he's in the bad spot. This is amazing. And then the next thing she said, I was like, and we just jumped off the cliff. It's over, it's down, it's bad, this is ending. So, and what I think my thing is might be different than yours, actually. So here's what I heard.
Okay.
She apologized for putting him in a hard spot. She says she wished she had shown him more of her heart at the airport hangar. In that conversation at the hangar, she says, "You know my heart," like 30 fucking times. What is it, Madison? Did you not show your heart? Does he not know your heart? What's your heart saying? Why aren't you telling him? Because your heart doesn't have a mouth. And he can't know it because it's just an organ that does some stuff. It doesn't have a sentience, doesn't have a function besides pumping blood. I hate that phrase, it's the dumbest shit ever. And it's so vague that it allows her, or anyone, to use it in the way that she's like, I wish I'd shown you more of my heart. Even though in the time that she's saying she wished she'd shown more, she said, you know my heart, my heart is this, my heart is that, my heart. What is it? So as soon as she said that, I'm like, this is bullshit. It's over. She's giving herself the gift of going back on what she said earlier, now that she's even more uncomfortable.
Yes.
Done.
So this was my... okay.
It's hard because it's incongruent.
Each
thing doesn't make sense.
It's very incongruent. So one of the things that I really loved that she said at the dinner table was that she recognized that she did not expect that just because she chose this for herself, that the person that she would marry would choose that for themselves.
Yeah.
Is it themselves? Themselves.
Yeah, no, that's what she said. And that's...
No, and objectively, so that in a vacuum is a beautiful statement for her to have that awareness of, I'm choosing this for me. I also recognize that I may meet somebody who has had sex before, and that's not going to disqualify them from potentially being with me.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
here's where it gets confusing. As Carla pointed out in the chat, the Bachelor world is a very strange situation. It's a very strange way of finding a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So the situation of guy proposes to me 6 days after having sex with other person, again, probably wouldn't even be a factor in real life.
No.
However, I do think that is Madi's responsibility as a confident, religious woman to say, this is me. I will love on you, and I'm not going to have sex until I'm married.
Yeah.
And in this construct of The Bachelor, if you do end up sleeping with other people, for me, that means I'm not the one for you, and I'm going to be too uncomfortable to move forward in a relationship. That's it.
Done.
Conversation had.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with Madi's values. There is nothing wrong with Madi's choices. What I find to be her area of opportunity is A, her confidence in telling him, B, being aware of the Bachelor construct and what the format of the show is before making that choice to be on it. And then C, I forgot because I forgot.
That's okay.
Because migraine yesterday.
So we're going to get into their exact conversation. I took as detailed as I could of notes for this part of the conversation because it's important and incongruent. So, and Peter starts asking questions that she finds difficult to answer because she's struggling with the personal, I think her personal internal struggle and the incongruency of what she's actually saying because she's trying so hard to, rightly, not control his actions. And she also has this other voice that is telling her
to control his actions. Yeah.
Well, it's telling her that if he doesn't do what she lives by, if he does not adhere to her moral code, then he is not a good partner for her, blanket statement, because she has repeated that sentence in her head probably for a decade at this point.
Right.
That if my husband doesn't do this, then it's not. So, here we are.
Here we are.
He reflects, so she tells Better Twist away, doesn't expect a partner to do it, but now she has an issue with him being intimate with someone else before the wedding, or proposal.
Before the wedding.
Whatever.
Oh my god, could you imagine if it ended in a wedding like Love is Blind?
So, he reflects that it's amazing, but that's not really his way of being religious, and he asks her exactly what she's looking for. And she says she would not be able to move forward if he slept with other women. The other two women being Hannah, Ann, and Victoria in this case.
Yeah, not other women in general.
No. On this show.
Okay, yes. Which she
the show that she admitted she signed up for and knew what the format of it was and chose to withhold the information that is making this conversation so painful. So due to her actions and decisions, now she's uncomfortable and sharing it with him at the worst possible moment, and it's really difficult. It's understandable why it hurts so much and why it's difficult for them. I have very little sympathy in this case. I have empathy.
Yes.
I have no sympathy.
Can you explain the difference? Because I think sometimes those two get confused.
I understand that this conversation is very painful for her because she has a ton of feelings for Peter and she has lived by a code that she has set for herself her entire life. And those two are now fighting inside of her head. And that has to be really painful and challenging. I don't feel bad for her, which is sympathy. What I just described as empathy. This is sympathy. I don't feel bad for you because you did it to yourself.
Right. It's also like if I'm... okay, let's bring this into non-religious, non-sex circumstances. If I am choosing to be a vegetarian, and then I choose to have my birthday dinner at Outback Steakhouse, and then I'm uncomfortable having a conversation about what I can eat, I put myself in a precarious position.
Yep.
Now, you can still have empathy for that.
Absolutely. That sucks that it's hard for you to eat here.
Right. But, there's no sympathy because it's why did you pick Outback?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And yes, J. Jobs, you're right. Madison was careful not to say outright, I will leave. She kept saying, I might not be able to move forward.
However, that's also a problem. Either stick to your guns or put them in your holster.
Right.
Because what are you going to do? So, then she says... she doesn't want to hold something over his head. And then also acknowledges that she has certain expectations for a partner. Which, you're holding it over his head at this point.
Right.
And that's the problem that I have in this, is that, and there's 4 or 5 more examples I think in this, where she says one thing, and then says another thing, and that's why I keep thinking that she's at odds with herself, because the first thing she says is her. I think it's honest her. I don't want to hold this over your head. And then the other voice in the back of her head says, but it's not what you said you'd do. And then she's like, but I also have these expectations.
Yeah. I really do think that she is having some inner turmoil. And this is when I want to be able to see, so they say that they have a therapist on set, which I believe that they do.
I 100% believe they do.
But I wish that we were able to see some of these interactions, because this is a great example of, Madi needs to sit down with someone and flush this out that doesn't have a bias right? Because if she talks to the other girls, they have a bias because they want to be with him. If she talks to Peter, he has a bias because he doesn't want to feel rejected and he has feelings for her. If she talks to a producer, they have a bias because all they're doing, as J. Jobs has pointed out in the chat, their one job is to get eyeballs on that screen every week. That's it. Yep. and they will do anything that they can to get us all to watch it. So all of these people have some sort of skin in the game.
Yeah.
And Madi needs to sit down with someone who does not have any skin in the game in terms of the outcome. And that's it. Like, it's, yeah. I have so much compassion and empathy for her. I just think that she is struggling to really figure out what she wants right now.
Totally. So he clarifies with her and asks if she would walk away from him in a future. I'm paraphrasing this. He asks her if she would be able to walk away from him in a future together and all of that based on something that happens this week.
Which was an excellent reflection and paraphrase.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She does not say yes or no to this. She says she can't wrap her mind around him proposing to her in a week if he had slept with other women. That's not a yes or no. That is just describing the problem.
Yes.
Great job. Then he reflects it and says, I understand that. I understand that's your position. And he tells her, I'm not going to give you details about what's going on with my other relationships, which is incredibly respectful to them and to her and to him.
Yes.
So great job so far. Then she says, well, I wouldn't want details, but I need to know what happened.
Which, look,
okay,
I understand.
I understand she doesn't want to know positions and how many times and where and who and what piece of furniture was involved. Great, I understand that. However, she refuses to give a yes or no of whether or not this is a deal breaker for her. And then she has to give him a yes or no, did you? That's not fair. Either have the conversation or don't. But she's trying to have her version of this conversation.
Yeah. And it's really...
She says he's worth it and still fighting. He's worth fighting for and all of that. But clearly, in my opinion, he isn't worth it because you knew the format of the show and you knew what week it was and you're not fighting.
Yeah.
She's asking for the answer of a question that she doesn't want to make the decision on herself.
It's challenging. It's challenging. It's really challenging. He says, I hate this situation right now. And I love that phrasing. I really love that phrasing. Because he's not blaming her.
Oh.
He's not saying, how dare you try to tell me what I'm doing. That's another difference between Luke P on Hannah's season and how Madi has handled it. Madi is not shaming Peter.
No, not at all.
For Luke was shaming Hannah. Which is why Hannah came back with, like, I did have sex. I had sex in a windmill twice. Right? And, like, that whole scene.
Yeah. It's 4 times.
Well, that came out later. And he doesn't want her to leave. He empathizes with her, telling her how tough it is. And he says, I can't lose you. Mm-hmm. And this is interesting to me because I do think that it is human nature to sometimes not realize how much you care about somebody, like just the depths until you're about to lose them. I think that is both in romantic and not romantic. Like sometimes there will be family members that die, right? And then you talk to the person and they're like, I didn't realize like how much I cared about this aunt or cousin until they're not here anymore. And like, so I do understand Peter maybe having this reaction of like, holy shit, I really want to keep her around. And I appreciate his honesty when he said, I can see a future with you. And going into this week, I could see that with the other 2 women too. And that was, because that is hard to hear on the receiving side. And frankly, it's hard to say. Just to answer the question in the chat, there has been only one successful Bachelor marriage technically, and that is Sean Lowe. He is the only one still married. However, I like to count Jason Mesnick because technically he picked Molly on After the Final Rose, which was still the show, even though he picked Melissa early on. But the Bachelorettes do have a higher marriage rate. There are a lot of Bachelorettes still with their person.
So we're getting to the end of their conversation before the end, and I like what Peter said about this, because she's basically telling him, you got to tell me, yes or no, did you have sex? Because that makes me be here, yes or no. And I like what he says. He leans back. He's visibly, I like his pissed off face or like exhausted face because he does not want to have to deal with this right now.
No.
And he's also acknowledging that he has to.
Yeah.
He sighs, he leans back, and he says, I don't want this to be all about sex right now. Which is probably, I think a lot of how he's gone about this season is the after effects of being through Hannah's season as a contestant and seeing all the stuff that she had to go through and all the questions around sex and all of the pressure and all that. So I kind of enjoyed that because he's like, I don't want to have this be all about the one thing again because you just told me that you're waiting for the marriage to have sex, and I don't want that to be the focus of this. But he has to be honest, and he tells her, and I love the way he phrased this, I have been intimate, and I can't lie to you about that. He didn't say with who. He didn't say how many times.
How big
that
intimate.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And that's what I really appreciated about this. He says, I can 100% see us together at the end of this, but I can also do that with the others. Then she excuses herself to go process, which she says, I just need to get up. She didn't say, I need to go process, because no one says that.
I do.
Well,
but I'm weird.
You're also not someone on the show.
Someone
on the show wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't survive The Bachelor.
So we come back from commercial. Peter's crying, and she is saying she feels... This is what I was talking about earlier. She starts throwing around words that we haven't heard her use before. And I think it's because of the emotional distress and challenge she's been going through. She says she feels hurt and let down. How could you be let down about something he didn't know he was letting you down about? Because you never fucking said it last week.
Right.
And if you had, then you can say this, even though it's still pretty arbitrary and rude to be let down by someone who's having their own experiences when you haven't agreed mutually that that's what life is.
I mean, she can still feel let down.
Sure.
But yes, there is less reason to because she did not really assert what she wanted.
Absolutely. She's hurt and let down. And then we hear her in the moment interview saying she was really clear with him and that he went and did what he did anyway.
Which she was not clear with it. And then I started getting frustrated with her.
Yeah.
And I didn't like this. I also think that Peter has gotten a lot of flack for being very indecisive this season. And I agree with that. I think that he really needs to, one of his areas of opportunity is decisiveness specifically around people pleasing. 100%. I also do think that he has handled some really tough stuff very well.
Yeah.
He got tossed this curveball by the person who has been a front runner in his mind the entire time. And his reaction was quite genuine. He very much kept his cool and his wits about him. He cried instead of getting angry, which we've talked about before. Anger is a secondary emotion. Oh, yeah. So a lot of times anger comes out before the sadness does, right? Like an iceberg, the sadness is underneath. He immediately skipped past the anger and just allowed himself to be hurt and sad and confused.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that in any person, regardless of gender. I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to express emotion however that comes out in you.
Absolutely. Well, that's the end of my notes.
So they talk outside.
Yeah,
She says, I can't change what I believe in, what I stand for, and what I believe. I can't change that, and I don't want to feel bad for having that and being that. And he says, please don't leave. I know I've hurt you. I'm sorry for that. Please don't walk away from this.
Yeah.
And he says, what do you need to do? And she says, I don't know. Which contributes to the fact that...
Yeah, we know Madison.
We don't. Like, she doesn't know. She's conflicted now.
We know, you don't know.
Yeah. So then they hug. She walks away shortly after. However, we know from editing, right? All of us know that this walk away could be her going to get a fucking glass of water.
Yeah.
It's a very similar thing to the Cassie Colton stuff. Like, there was a lot of misedit and tricks.
Or even Victoria P. We saw her walking away from him in one of the early episodes, like a quick cut, and we didn't know what it was, if she was going somewhere else or this and that.
Yeah. And look, I also want to address that there are a lot of people commenting, not just in this chat, but like on the internet, about how if he loved Madi, if he were truly in love with Madi, or truly in love with any of the women, that he would not have an inclination to sleep with the other women. And I just want to address the fact that not everybody is wired for this, like, one person mentality. And I'm not saying that Peter can't be monogamous in a committed relationship. But there are people who are capable of loving more than one person at one time. Whether or not they act on that is completely not related. But it is possible for many human beings to be in love with more than one person. Now, am I saying that Peter's in love with more than one person? I don't know. I'm not in his head. I don't know even if it's possible for him to know these people well enough. I don't know that. We haven't seen enough. But to say if he were actually in love with one of them, he wouldn't want to explore the other relationships, I disagree with from just a clinical human being level.
And so I have two things on that. And one, it goes back to, I mean, I'm sure it went on beforehand, but the first time I ever saw this happening on the show was Ben Higgins' season. This is a common trope of the Bachelor franchise. He was at the end being like, how do I get through this? I'm in love with two people. Okay, that criticism of Peter, debunked. Unless you're going to go after Ben Higgins, same thing. Like, who are you being upset
But everyone went after Ben Higgins. He was villainized for telling two people
like
he loved them. Kyle, this was before you were, like, fully watching. Yeah. He was scrutinized for telling two people.
And ever since then, though, hasn't it been a pretty common thing at the end? For them for the lead to be like, well, I have this and I have that. And
on The Bachelor, yes. I think on Bachelorette, no.
Interesting. Well, so that leads me to my second thing here. And let's talk about societal pressure and indoctrination. How many TV shows, movies, books, songs do you hear that have the phrase, well, you want to make sure that you take your future person for a test drive first, right? Ugh. It's in Friends. Ugh. It's in How I Met Your Mother.
I hate that expression.
Absolutely. It's super fucked up. The idea that you're objectifying someone's sexuality in the way that, like, oh, well, if they're not good in bed that one time, then that means they're not going to be good in bed ever, which people learn. Who was great in bed their first time? No one. Anyway.
Wait, you mean like their first time period or like their first time with a new partner?
Oh, I said first time period, but I guess also with a new person, you're learning a new person's physicality. There's things that...
Yeah.
Whatever. There's so much that goes into it. That concept, though, is not a foreign thing for the majority of people. And that's why there's so much talk around the show, specifically around, well, it happened on Colton's season. Like, well, he hasn't had sex yet. Do you think he's ready for a relationship? That literally was said. So this idea that someone wants to have sex with somebody before they enter into a committed relationship or propose or whatever,
it's like,
that's more of a societal concept. That's everywhere. It's permeated culture. So there's a point where that phrase takes one for a test drive. You know what that means without actually saying what it means.
Yeah, which I despise that expression.
Absolutely. I'm not saying the expression's good. I'm saying that we all know exactly what that means. And so that idea is so permeated in our culture that I don't know. I think we're just taking this all a little... I think Madison has created a conversation out of this that is interesting because it breaks the format of the show a little bit because she knew what was going to happen and chose not to say anything, and now we're facing the consequences of it.
Right, and in a romantic relationship, sex is a key factor of importance.
Yes.
So to explore, and again, there's nothing wrong with not exploring that if that is your own personal choice.
Absolutely.
However, there are real things, like, for example, there are women who are actually allergic to certain men's semen.
That is so crazy.
Could you imagine if like you haven't had sex, right? And then like on your wedding night you go to have sex and then you're allergic to there are just so many things. So I think that shaming Peter, I think that we cannot shame either of them.
No.
For having what they want. And that really it's just more of a question of, are they able to find a compromise in this? Mm-hmm. And does that work for them or no?
Yeah.
And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, that sucks.
Yeah.
But they're just not fundamentally,
matched.
Compatible.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, Peter and Victoria don't have communication skills. They need to work on that.
Right.
Every relationship has areas of opportunity. Sometimes sex is that area of opportunity.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to know until it's a part of the relationship.
Right. If anything, having sex with the final three makes sense in the context of the show if you're speed dating and you're putting every single possible aspect of your relationship under stress test as you go along, that's an aspect of your relationship. So it's up to you whether or not you want to test it here or just after the show. But then if you get to the end of the show, propose, then go on the little honeymoon thing with the person you chose, have sex, and it's so bad that you don't want to do that, then you look like a real asshole. So, you can't win in this case.
People in the chat are freaking out about being allergic to semen. Yeah, so this is part of why I think sex education in our country, if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably heard me talk about this. Sex education sucks in our country. We don't actually learn about things that are helpful as adults. We learn about what not to do, how not to get pregnant, how not to get an STI, how not to do this, what is not okay. We don't actually learn some of the intricacies, like being allergic to someone's sperm. This is a real thing. And also things like BDSM and like how to communicate around stuff like that and getting rid of myths, or the fact that the clitoris is shaped like a freaking wishbone and it's not just like some dot on a woman's body. These are all things that people don't necessarily know when sex ed is not taught very well.
I mean, my sex ed was don't do it, and here's how you put a condom on a ruler. Which gave all the guys size problems. Like, we all got really in our heads about that.
Complex.
And it was one of the rulers with the metal guide side. Yeah. So the metal guide side tore the condom, which actually was a pretty You're
like, here's an example of a broken condom. Yeah, heads up. We have people... Look, Nicole says, I'm 30, she's never heard of that. Hallie says her school didn't even have sex ed. J. Jobs said civics and sex ed don't exist in schools. Yeah, Anna doesn't even remember sex ed class. Yeah, J. Jobs, who's a male, is like, a wishbone? Really? Yes, it's shaped like a wishbone. And we could probably do a whole other show just on sex ed.
Maybe.
These are the things that... This is why part of the reason why I love this show is because we can take something like a conversation between Peter and Madi, and we can talk about things like the shape of the clitoris. And... yeah, what can you learn from it exactly?
Don't watch this show just for the Bachelor recap. You'll watch it for the sex ed.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, this is a good episode. It ran a little long, but I think that we had a lot to discuss.
And thank you. There's 94 of you on with us live right now. If you have any follow-up questions, you guys, the live chat goes away after the video ends, but the comments under the video stay forever. So if you have questions about anything that we talked about or feedback for us, again, like I said earlier in the episode, we're not here to preach. We're here to talk. There may be some psychology things that we teach, but we're not here to say, this is our opinion and our opinions are correct. Our opinions are just our opinions, and an opinion is inherently not correct or incorrect. It's just an opinion.
Absolutely.
And if it's a fact, we will state that. Like, factually, the clitoris is shaped like a wishbone. That is not an opinion. That is a fact.
This is the definition of ultimatum.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for being here. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you liked it.
Rate it, subscribe, leave a comment, all the things.
And we'll see you next week. Let us know also in the comments, do you prefer this time on Wednesdays or do you like the day after on Tuesdays? Let us know.
We'll think about it.
And thank you for being here with us. We love you all so much. Thank you. Great discussion, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Podcast listeners, thank you too. We love you. Bye.